In general, growth of wages has slowed at a global level. So there was an average increase of global wages of about 3% a year in the years before the financial and economic crisis. And now since then it's an average of about 2% a year. Has not recovered, and it goes up and down each year, but the trend has been down since the crisis with no clear sign of recovery. Now, from 3% to 2%, you would say that's not much, but if you think of people having been getting average wage increases of 3% a year before the crisis year after year, ahead of inflation, that was an improvement in real living standards. Very significantly, of that 2%, the largest share of the growth in wages is accounted for by China. So if you take China out of the equation, actually the average wage growth is closer to 1%, which in many countries actually is below inflation. So then in those economies, which is most of the advanced economies, you would be seeing workers falling behind. So not increased living standards, but actually living standards that are falling. By contrast, in the developing world, wages have been growing faster generally than in the developed economies, and most particularly in developing Asia. Rising inequality in those countries where inequality is increasing is very closely associated with wage inequality. What we argue is that as inequality increases in some countries, it becomes harder and harder to solve the problem through taxes and transfers because you have more and more inequality. Well, are you going to raise taxes a lot to try to address it? Particularly, are you going to increase taxes on corporations, or are you afraid that you'll have profit shifting, as we've seen, or will you have tax inversions, or will you have the problems of collecting it? So we think you have to really take a comprehensive approach. Labor market policies, minimum wages, collective bargaining, social protection policies, social protection floors, progressive taxation, and macroeconomic policy that pushes in the same direction as those other policies, not in the opposite direction.